Hello and welcome. This is Dr. Flores with Kool Academy, and we are in lesson number 10, Create WBS, which is Create Work Breakdown Structure. So we are still in the scope management knowledge area. And which process group? Do you remember? Yes, we are in planning. There are 5 process groups: initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. Know where you are. This orientation will make a big difference when you take the exam. So what is the PMP Live Seminar Series? I know most of you already know, but we discuss questions, we discuss topics. I help you prepare for the tough ones, the tough questions that you will see on the exam. The guidance that I try to give you here is so that you can answer more than one question. While you might be very prepared for the exam, and I know some of you are, the other part of it is, how do you take a test? If you can determine how to eliminate options, your score is going to increase. So we have a short welcome, and I talked to you a little bit about what the seminar is all about, the live seminar series. We will be live next week, and that'll give us a chance to do some Q&A, discuss key terms from the lesson. Know that each lesson has important key terms. They are not all the terms you're going to see on the exam, but enough of them to give you some understanding. The more you're knowledgeable regarding the terms or the vocabulary, whatever you want to call it, the better you will perform. One reason is because you can eliminate options by saying, no, there's no way that's the answer, kind of thing. And I also write questions for you each week, and the focus is, again, not to help you answer one question, but to help you answer multiple questions. If you use the guidance that I give you, I know you can improve your score, because I've helped many students do that. And I go through and talk about why that's not the answer, why it's not the best answer, because you're looking for that one. You're not looking for the right answer, because there are many times on the exam, right answers, this is not the best answer. So our job is to pick that one. And then, of course, we'll confirm the date. We have a Q&A, but since this is a recorded session, you can just send me an email. I'm very good about that and get back with you as quickly as possible. And we'll get back to the live sessions starting next week. So create WBS. Actually, before I start, just remember that you get a PDU, a professional development unit, by listening to the presentation, whether you are live or whether you are listening to the recording. You submit that to PMI. This particular session or lesson, which is the PMP Live Seminar Series, is listed on the PMI website under Kool Academy. So you get a PDU. So if you're following along, you want to get your PDUs, you got 35. Boom, this is how you prepare for the exam or qualify for the exam, is to get 35 PDUs. And on the back end, if you already have your PMP and you're listening to these, you have to get 60 over 3 years, and then you'll be qualified. So create WBS, create work breakdown structure. The definition, the create WBS is the process of subdividing project deliverables and project work into smaller, more manageable components. Key word here is subdivide. When I see subdivide on the exam, I know they're talking about the WBS. So be ready for that. Create WBS deals with subdividing the components into until the point where they are more manageable. In essence, we take the scope of the project, right? Because before we got to create WBS, we were at defined scope. So the scope is the work to be performed for the project. We take that scope and we break it down. Let's just say you're planning for a wedding. Well, you don't just say, hey, let's go plan for the wedding. You break it down, right? To the reception, to the ceremony, to whatever other events, major deliverables that you have, and perhaps it's even the honeymoon that you put into this big WBS, and you break it down to the point where you would hire a caterer. And we are subdividing the project into more manageable pieces. That's very important, because there's a saying, how do you eat an elephant? And the answer is one bite at a time. Same concept is we break things down to the point where we can work on them and we can assign the right person to do the right work at the right time. Don't forget that. As a project manager, we find the right people to do the right work at the right time, and we can only do that if the work is manageable. someone needs to break it down and create this WBS. So look for the word subdivide. Subdivide project deliverables into more manageable components. The key benefit? The key benefit of this process is that it provides a structured vision of what has to be delivered. So once we know for the wedding that we have a reception, right? We have a ceremony, that we have to also go and procure a site, a venue, those kinds of things. Once we know that, then we can start assigning the right people to do that work. This is important. The create work breakdown structure process is not negotiable. It is a must do. Otherwise, it's a hodgepodge and we're just hoping that things will be captured in the process. The work breakdown structure on the exam is sometimes called the 100% rule. Again, the 100% rule, because only what's included in the WBS will be worked on for that project. If it's not included, then it's not part of the project. It is therefore excluded. I hope that makes sense. Here are some of the key terms. First, decomposition. Anytime you see the word decomposition, know that they're probably referring to the WBS, the work breakdown structure. This is a technique for dividing, here's that word again, and subdividing the project scope and project deliverables into smaller, more manageable parts. So we take the wedding example again, now we have the venue, right? So you need to secure the venue. That's a key result, a key deliverable. Well, what's the process? Well, of course, you need to identify, the budget. You need to identify different areas, collect bids, and the process goes on, and we have to do that. Otherwise, we can't secure the right venue for our wedding. Okay, scope baseline. This is the approved version of a scope statement. I would remember that one sentence there, or that part of the sentence. That is the approved version of a scope statement, work breakdown structure, and its associated WBS dictionary. I'll talk to you about the dictionary in a minute, but just know that the scope baseline has three components. Number one, it includes the project scope statement, the work breakdown structure, and the WBS dictionary. So those three items, okay? Scope baseline. This is a question on the exam now. There are three components to the scope baseline. That is the project scope statement, the WBS, and its associated WBS dictionary. So let's look at the WBS dictionary. This is a document. That's very important. Now you know it's a document, it's not a plan, that provides detailed deliverable, activity, and scheduling information about each component in the WBS. So what the WBS dictionary does, it takes each work package, right? Each work package, and gives you detailed information, like, for example, what is the identifying code? What is the description? How do we tie it to the budget? How do they align to the budget with some kind of code? Who's going to work on it? When is it due? And what are the risk factors? And so on. So the WBS dictionary has nothing to do with Webster, okay? It has nothing to do with that. It is a dictionary is used for each work package. A dictionary is used for each work package in the project. Now, the work packages are the result of the WBS process, the work breakdown structure, and that process is called decomposition. The WBS, you can do what's called top down or bottom up. Bottom up means you break it down to the lowest common denominator and then you estimate on the way up. You aggregate up. So bottom up estimating, now you know, is associated with the work breakdown structure, and it is a lot more detailed because we break it down, right? We decompose it. A top down WBS, on the other hand, is a little bit more of an overview, and it's definitely not as detailed. It's more general. For example, you can ask somebody, hey, you got married last year at venue X. How much was it, and what was the overall price? They say, well, it was about $25,000. So that's a top-down estimation. It's a quick number. It's not as precise, but it's important to get. A bottom-up estimating process is part of the WBS, and it gives you a detailed answer, or more of a detailed answer. Okay, the sample question number one. The functional manager is having a discussion with the project manager regarding the work breakdown structure process, the WBS. On the exam, know that they will probably spell it out for you like I did here. The focus of the conversation pertains to what is meant by decomposition. All of the following are involved in the decomposition process, except, make sure you read this carefully, because all of the following are involved in the decomposition process, except, now you're being told something is not. So read it carefully. You've got two ways to look at the question. You're going to look at what is included, or you can say, let me look for the anomaly, the one that doesn't seem to make sense. I'm going to read them through so that you can get a better understanding. But the other point I want to make is that here is a discussion between the functional manager and the project manager. PMI uses the functional manager to mean the departmental manager. We have different functions. We have marketing, we have IT, we have operations, we have finance, accounting, and so on, human resources. So a functional manager is a departmental manager. All right, A, identifying and analyzing the deliverables and related work. Is that part of decomposition? Sure, we identify and analyze the deliverables. Sure, that we can do that. What about decomposing the upper WBS levels into lower level detailed components? Well, that's exactly what work breakdown structure is about, and that's what decomposition is about, is we break it down into the lowest common denominator. So B Bravo sounds like a good answer. What about C Charlie? Refining the scope to ensure only the approved work is done. Well, the second part, to ensure only the approved work is done, that is a pretty good part of the answer. The problem here is refining the scope. So it's like, oh, during the WBS process, we're going to kind of make some changes and kind of make it look right or make it look easier or whatever, but it's not really the scope. We shouldn't be refining the scope. Now, we can change the scope, but there's a process for that. That's called perform integrated change control. So refining the scope is a problem. Okay, let's look at the last one, D delta. Developing and assigning identification codes to the WBS components. This is a correct answer because we want to break down the WBS and create a WBS dictionary for each work package. So the outlier here, I don't really want to say outlier, but the one that sort of is not correct is C Charlie. Refining the scope made this one wrong. You see how the second part to that was correct? To ensure only the approved work is done. That was correct. But guess what? The entire thing must be correct. That's where this stuff gets tough, right? So it's C Charlie, refining the scope to ensure only the approved work is done, is the exception to the list provided here. The explanation, the scope was defined, right? We have a process called define scope, and that was before create WBS, before this process. Therefore, refining the scope is not necessary here. We don't have to do it because it's already been, completed, and the WBS is used to decompose the agreed scope, right? So we already agreed to it. Why are we refining it now? And, before we refine anything, we better go talk to the customer. And that's kind of the line of thought here, is that this is the weird one because now we're making unilateral decisions, or we're making decisions without really consulting the customer. Now, some of you might be saying, well, we probably did consult. That probably did happen. And then if you say that, I'm telling you, you probably made an assumption. And the assumption is going to be dangerous if you use that throughout the exam. So hopefully this made some sense. All right, the last one here, sample question number 2. The project manager is informed by the head manager from the printing and shipping department that a reproduction machine has broken. So like a printing machine has broken. To meet the Friday deadline, a new machine must be in place by the next day. So here, the head manager, it's just a tricky way of saying the manager from the functional department, okay? So PMI will use stuff like that to kind of trick you. And the reproduction machine, you just have to make the assumption that that is a printing machine, okay? What should the project manager do next? Okay, so a lot of questions on the exam on what do they do first and what do they do next. This is the next one. A, approve the immediate purchase of the reproduction machine. Okay, this is a problem now. Because if I just approve it, somebody comes up to me and says it's not working, and I say, well, go buy it. That's a big problem, because if you're doing it as a project manager, maybe other managers are doing it too, and before you know it, you're going to get way out of budget. So nothing should be immediate. Okay, never select an answer. Avoid selecting an answer in the exam where immediate is included. We should have a process in place for decision making. B, review the work breakdown structure to identify the appropriate step to take. Okay, so we're going to look at the WBS and say, okay, well, we'll do this. Well, not a bad way to think about, project management, because the WBS is important, but the WBS is only going to base it on what work has been approved or what scope has been approved. This is okay as a starting point, but not really the best answer, because it's not going to tell you what you should do next. It's going to give you some guidance, because once you look at it, you're going to say, oh, okay, well, this is the work to be done, but you don't exactly know what to do now because something is broken, right? Something has broken the machine. C, review the scope management plan for guidance. This is actually a pretty right answer. We can go to the scope management plan and say, oh, what should we do next? And in the scope management plan, you're going to get D, submit a change request to the change control board. So you notice here that C, Charlie, is a great answer, because that's what we should do, go to the scope management plan. However, the best answer is what's going to be included in the scope management plan, and that is the process for a change request, and that's based on what the change control board will do, make a recommendation, and they will consult with the customer, they will consult with the proper people to give you the funding if necessary. And you're saying, well, that's a process, that's going to take a long time. Yes, it could take longer than you just saying yes or no, but if you have it set up correctly, this board can make a pretty quick decision. And if you have that in your scope management plan, they might even be able to make the decision that afternoon and give you an answer, especially if something is urgent. There should be an escalation process included in the scope management plan that helps you make the appropriate decision. So let's look at the solution here. D delta, or the answer, the best answer, submit a change request to the change control board. This is through the process called perform integrated change control. And notice that you've gone through the process. The explanation is the best choice here is to submit a change request to the change control board, the CCB. It's important to know that the project managers must avoid, we will avoid a unilateral approach to decision making. This is wrong. Make sure to avoid selecting any option with the word, with the word immediately. We should not select an option where it says immediately do something. That is wrong. It is better to think it through and say, hey, listen, is this the right approach? And that's the plan, okay? That's how we do stuff. And the more we have a plan in place, the better off we're going to be. Okay, how was that? Easy or hard? Hopefully you're getting it, okay? This is tough stuff. If you haven't been prepared, if you haven't been planning, we need to look at it and think about what is the best answer and not the right answer, because you did have a right answer here. Review the scope management plan. That was the right answer. It's just not the best one. Okay. Q&A, if you do have a question or something that I can help you with, please email that to me. We're going to head back to the live sessions starting next week, and I can address some of those questions for you and get you ready for the PMP. So that is the plan for the live seminar. Make sure you pass this along to anyone who's ready or who's thinking about taking the CAPM or the PMP. I think you're seeing the value. You can go back and listen to any of these. You qualify for a PDU. Know that if you're interested in a training program, a comprehensive training program, we have that through the PMP Pass Suite. It's more than 50 hours where I go through all of these lessons, and then I have more than 250 questions that I narrate specifically for you, just like I did this one, but I do it over the scope of 250 questions. I'm sure that if you go through that, you're going to get a lot of value, because to go through 250 questions and cover each one of them in detail provides significant value. All right, I will see you next week. Thanks for joining us. Bye now.